Ladies and gentlemen, and good morning, brothers and sisters from the spiritual realm and our dear benefactors, our mentors. So today we're going to be talking about some very interesting topic, but this is a different way of starting a lecture. Actually, what I'll do is, even before I introduce the topic, I'll tell you a little story. The story of the eagle and the jackdaw. So the jackdaw was on a tree branch, and it was watching the fields when it saw an eagle swoop in, grab a sheep with its talons, and fly away with it to its nest. The jackdaw saw that and thought, okay, I can do that as well. So the jackdaw did the same thing. It just flew around for a while, then looked at a particular sheep, came down, swooping in, grasped it with its talons, but it could not lift the sheep. It could not take it. It could not take flight with it. And it got its talons tangled in the wool of the sheep. The shepherd that was nearby saw that, saw the jackdaw now completely tangled in the wool, went there, grabbed the jackdaw, right? It was a type of a crow, grabbed the jackdaw, clipped its wings, and gave the jackdaw to its children as a pet in a cage. So there are many ways we can look at this Aesop fable. This comes down to us from Aesop. We can think of it as vanity, as jealousy. We can look at it so many different ways of basically looking and desiring what somebody else has. But we can also look at it from its very, very basic point, which is, what is it that we need, and what is it that we usually covet or that we want? And this is the title of the talk, Needs and Wants. And I'm not going to refer myself to the superfluous, to the excesses of modern life necessarily, or to material things. Even things that are not necessarily material, but that instead of needing them, we create a desire for them, and we get the two confused. The whole point of this lecture is, first of all, to understand where they come from, where they showed up in our evolutionary progress as spirits. Because if we know where they come from and what they are, we have a better chance of understanding them and also of addressing and be able to create a division of what is a need and what actually is a want, and perhaps have a healthier life, according to that. So, like in everything, you've seen my talks yesterday and 3 days ago, the first thing we have to do is define our terms. There is no point in discussing things if we don't define our points. It was Rousseau that said, tell me what your terms are, or don't even bother talking to me. You have to define our terms, because otherwise I will say something, you may hear the words, but you won't understand. Or we can still have the same words, but with different meanings. So we have to not only say the same thing, but we have to mean the same thing with those same words. So let us look at it first as the definition. What we are going to define, how are we going to define needs? And what I want you to understand also is that everything here is within the Spiritist scope. So perhaps this is not the way a psychologist necessarily would define them, or a sociologist would define them, but we have to define it according to our Spiritist terms. This is a Spiritist center. So we're going to circumspect our definitions to what we do here in the Spiritist center. So needs are conditions, or sets of conditions, sets thereof, whose deterministic existence is inherent to the psychosomatic organization of the individual entity. And when we look at this, we have a person in our Spiritist Center who is a character. He's a very nice individual. I like him very much. And usually, whenever he sees something like that, or we are in a study group, and we read something from the Spirit's book usually, or the medium's book, the first thing that he goes, he says, in English, please. Okay? He just looks at us. The moment that we finish reading something, he will go and say, in English, please. Because, there's too many words or too many fancy words about it. Okay, we'll do that. We'll go and look at this definition slowly, and we'll try to understand exactly what they mean. So, let us start with conditions. These are events. These are circumstances in life. These are experiences, attempts, trials. You put all of that together. So, conditions is a very general word here. We are not specifying what type. Everything that we have in our daily lives is actually a set of conditions. Here, sets thereof, we are just referring to that. So it's just not only one, but it can be a combination of them. Actually, life is always much more complicated than just one thing happening. So it's a combination of them. So that's the first part. Now, here's the other thing. Existence, incipience, presence, they are there. They are right in front of us. They are present where we are, right? So that's what we mean by existence. It's not something that is abstract, okay? It's not something that we are imagining, philosophizing about. It is right there. Now, it's not that it's right there like this table that I can grasp. It's not necessarily physical, but it's there. We deal with it. Okay, for instance, an emotion. An emotion may not be something you can grasp, you can grab, or can hold on to, but it's there. When you feel it, you feel it. You know if you're sad, if you're happy, you know if you're angry, you know if you're just despondent. It's an emotion. It's not something that's physical that you would grasp, but you know it's there. There is a presence. There is an existence of it. This is another interesting point. Inherent. Inherent means that it's built in, it's intrinsic, it is constitutive. It's part of our constitution. So these conditions that are built into us, for instance, we all have a human body. Well, we have to sleep at one point or another. We have to eat at one point or another. We can't live with it. We have to breathe. And not only breathe, but we have to breathe a certain amount of oxygen that is mixed with other gases. You take these things away, this physicality perishes. So this physicality has needs that are built in by its biology. You cannot do without them. You cannot just say, no, I'm going to stop breathing. Oh, no, I want to be very, very eco-conscious. So I will not eat anything that, roams, anything that, that is alive, not even plants. I'm going to live just from the sunlight. You're not going to be able to do that. Because there is an intrinsic need to this physicality, built in, constitutive, you cannot get around, right? The other thing is the psychosomatic. That's what I was telling you right now with the example of our physical bodies. Psycho meaning is related to the mind, therefore to the spirit, and somatic is related to the body, to this physicality. So this is actually putting together spirit, perispirit, and spirit, all in one, since here we are reincarnated beings. We have a physical body. If we are now talking about errant spirits, they don't have a physical body. They're just spirits, right? Which is they are an essence that has a spiritual body, a perispirit. That's the spirit, right? So in that case, you still have a psychosomatic, but the somatic there refers to the perispirit. Okay, it's the perispiritic soma, the perispiritic body, or simply the perispirit, as we say it. Let's keep moving. The organization is the structure, the body, the component. Like I just said before in the example, when we have a human body, a human constitution, a human structure, a human form, That's our organization. You might say, wow, why do you have that word there? Well, because one day we will not be on this planet. We'll be on another planet, and we'll have a different constitution, a different structure, a different body, a different organization. But we can even think of it in more earthly planes. When we discarnate, we go back to the spiritual realm, we no longer have this physicality, but we continue to have a spiritual body, the perispirit. That's a slightly different organization than the one we have as a physical body. So even here on this earth, still on earthly matters, we can have two different organizations. And finally, we're going to be talking about individual. So it's idiosyncratic, it's personal, it's non-transferable. In other words, my need is my own. My needs are my own. I cannot give my needs to you. You cannot give me your needs, because my organization is different than yours. My individuality is different than yours, right? And what is inherent to me may not be completely inherent to you. There are a few things we share, like being all from the human form, we share the needs of the human form, the need to breathe, the need to eat, the need to sleep, and things like that. But not all of our needs are like that. We have our own individual needs. So basically what we are saying is that these are the conditions, these are the situations in life that we respond differently to, because we have different organizations, okay? And we do that, we actually respond to it through our physical body and also through our minds. But there is one word that I haven't touched yet, which is the key there. I was wondering if you could guess. It's right there. It's in the definition here. And the word is deterministic. In other words, you cannot avoid it. It's an external imposition on us. A need is then something that is imposed on us. I cannot use my free will. I can try to use my free will like I gave in the example before and say, I'm going to live from the solar energy only. I will die. This physicality will die. Because this physicality imposes on me certain needs. The need to sleep, the need to eat, the need to do this, that, and the other. So needs are deterministic. They are outside the free will. I cannot control them. What I have as a need, I have to fulfill. It's deterministic. All right? So right now, what we have, the conditions, the situations, the experiences that we have to go through, the way we go about them, we have some free will there. We can choose the way we go about them, but we cannot avoid them. Hence the word deterministic. All right? So now that we have seen needs, okay, so these are all of the things we discussed, perhaps we should look at something else. Perhaps we should now look at the definition of wants and see how they differ from one another. So what is the definition of wants? Wants are impositions or sets thereof whose willful emergency is imparted by the degree of moral and intellectual advancement of the individual entity. It's the same thing. The person goes, oh my God, please in English, right? So, well, you know, it can be a little scary at times when we see these definitions. So let us go and do the same thing again. Let us look at each one of these words that are key there. The impositions are the same, events, circumstances, experiences, much like the conditions we saw before for needs, okay? Or a combination of them. Like I said, life is usually a lot more complex than just one thing here or one thing there, or even two or three. It's usually a complicated, complex mix of conditions, right? So the other thing is, here is key, willful. So here, in willful, we are actually under the expression of our free will. Willful meaning that I can actually will these. So a want is something that I desire, that I create for myself. It's not something that I have to go through or I have no control over. Quite the opposite. This is the thing I actually can control. My control, right? Emergence, it means that since I can create them, I am the one who generates them, they emerge, unlike a need that is always with me. Its presence is always there because it's external to me. It's external to my will. The Creator, in putting us together, simple and ignorant, placed those things there in some way or another. Right? We're going to see that in a minute, how that goes. So in this case here, the emergence is that I can actually will something into existence. I can will a want into existence. I can desire something that wasn't there before. And once I do that, I create it. I bring it into existence. All right? Imparted. We are the ones who produce it, who instill it, who create it, right? And then degree. So that the extent, the level of my wants, how often they happen, how extensive they are going to be dependent on my moral and intellectual advancement. So I may have a want today that I couldn't even figure out 100 years ago. And my wants in 100 years will also be different because hopefully in these 2 blocks of 100 years of experiences, our moral and intellectual levels will have developed. And hopefully also, as we all believe, it's a point of faith, that will always be increasing and not going backwards, right? There are some individuals that sometimes surprise us, and we almost believe that there is a way that you can go backwards, but we don't. Our point of faith is that we always move forward. Okay? And finally, in this case, again, same thing. It's individual. So my wants are not yours. Your wants are not mine. Right? We may share a want in the sense that we want, we desire, we will for the same thing. But when it has to fulfill me separately from when and how it fulfills you. So it's still individual as well. It's separate. Right? So now that we have all that, this is all of the points. You notice that here we don't have the word deterministic. Because instead of deterministic, what is it that we have? Willful. So in this case, a want is something I bring into existence, whereas a need is something that is in me already from the beginning of my existence. And because I wasn't there before myself, it goes that I could not have placed there in the first place. So it has to be the Creator. So from that point of view right away, if we have now a belief that the Creator is all powerful, almighty, that's all justice, all love, and this and that, right from this point, we would say, well, then needs are usually more constructive than wants. Well, that is true, that needs are constructive, but that does not mean that wants are necessarily a bad thing. That the wants are actually destructive or non-constructive. So in order for us to understand a little bit, let us see how they showed up in our evolutionary process and when they did and how and why they did it. But for that, oh, sorry, I forgot to put this one. This is the comparison, all right? So deterministic with will, existence with emergence, because in a want, like I said to you, I bring it into existence, okay? And here it's inherent to my constitution. A want is imparted, okay? This is dependent on how I am put together perispiritically or physically. And in this case, it's dependent on my moral and intellectual advancement. But they're both individual. We don't share them. But like I said, now that we understand the needs and the wants, let us see how we can actually look at these things, okay, from the point of view of our evolution. We'll have to do a little math. Not with numbers, graphs. Don't get scared. I'm going to explain to you. Okay? I'm going to give just 2 slides to prepare you for us, so that we can understand this. Imagine that I have a line here at the bottom that grows from left to right. This is my spiritual progress. So time 0 is when I was put together by the Creator. How? When exactly? I don't know. Like I said before, next time you meet the Creator, ask it. And let me know, because I haven't heard of anyone who came back and said, yeah, I had a powwow with the Creator, with the Lord, and the Lord told me this. I don't know that. So if you do it, let us know. But we have a time 0. We had a birth, we had a beginning, we just don't have an end according to our articles of faith. It's a one point of faith. So this is what we're going to represent. So the further to the right you move here, the older, let's say, your spirit is, or the more evolved your spirit is. Because we know we cannot go backwards, we can also say that the more to the right you move, the more advanced you are. So this is not time necessarily, it's progress, which is different. Okay? Time, we can do the same thing, the same mistake over and over again for a while. So, no, this is progress. So the further we move to the right here, the more evolved we are. So this is what we're going to discuss. Whatever I put something in where I look at this axis here on horizontal, at the bottom, this is what it means. This is the beginning, and to the right is how we evolve. We are also going to put a vertical axis, and we are going to do the following. Now, here, this is our spiritual experience. And what we are going to plot is actually the intensity of each experience. When an experience is very little of or no intensity, it will be closer and closer to the bottom. If the intensity is high, it goes further and further up towards the arrowhead here. So now, let us imagine, for instance, that I get 2 experiences in my life, experience A and experience B. I'm not saying what they are. You don't have to worry about what they are. Just 2 points, 2 experiences, A and B, right? I can put one here, and I can put the other one over there. This means that when I had experience B, look, if I go all the way down here, right? So if I go all the way down here and I do the same thing for A, isn't this happening when I have achieved more progress? So experience B is when I was already more morally and intellectually evolved than when I had the experience A. All right? Also, I can actually look now at that part to the left. And then if experience B is higher than experience A in this part here of the graph, it means that experience B happened with a higher intensity. It's just more intense. That's all. So experience B happened after experience A, when I was already more morally advanced, more intellectually advanced, because it's to the right, according to the horizontal axis. And according to the vertical one, it's above experience A. You see these 2 points? Which means that B was more intense than A. But life doesn't happen with only 2 experiences. It happens with a lot more experiences. So now, if we put more of them, all of these points here, right? And you see that it can go up, they can go down, because sometimes we go and we have some experiences in life. They contribute to our progress, but they're more like a tepid blend. Some are really intense, like when we date someone, when we move to a new place, right? We get a new job, there's so many things happening, right? And sometimes, we basically just move from apartment A to apartment B because there was a better block, so you don't have the stress, for instance, of a move, things like that, but it's still an experience. Everything is an experience, right? Or when you cook something for the first time, it's one experience. It's one level, one intensity. You're tense, you don't know if it's going to work. And then when you have someone over for dinner, then the stress is all the way up because now you know you cannot make a mistake, right? And then when you cook that every single day for yourself or even for others, you're still learning every time you do it, but it's not as intense. So the points go up and they can go down, but they're always moving from left to right because we are always improving ourselves. Now imagine that I put so many points here that instead of having the points, okay, I can actually just join them all because they get so close to one another. So close to one another. I can always put an experience between these two, another one between these two and these two. So if I put so many of them, instead of putting the points, I can just draw a line connecting them. And then I have the profile of my progress, the profile of my experiences as well and the intensities that I have gone through. And this is what it shows up in the end. I forget about the data points, each one, and I just say, wow, this is how I progressed. This is the contour of my progress. We call it the profile of my progress. Don't worry about the shape. Don't worry about the shape because we all have a shape that moves from left to right. We are always improving. And we're always having experiences that are more and more intense to a certain point. But now that we understand how to read this graph here, let us try to understand what a need and a want is when we think about this. So let us look at the profile for our needs throughout our evolution. The profile. So each point here is so close to the next one that instead of writing them as a little dot or a circle, you just put a line connecting all of them. But let us see if we can understand. This is the profile, the trace, right? So you have this curve, and the needs are going to be drawn in blue, just so you know. I'm going to draw them one at a time first. So let us try to understand the needs, how we are drawing it. Okay? So remember, they are conditions or combinations of conditions. And these are deterministic. I cannot will them, and I cannot control them. Deterministic. There is an existence. They are already there. I do not put them into existence. I do not create them. So they are inherent. And they are inherent to the way I am put together, the way I am organizing. Let us look now in the graph how these words translate into a more mathematical profile. So let us think about the curve again. So I'm just going to reproduce the curve again. But let us look at this curve slowly. Let us take what is important for us as a spiritist. The first thing is here. If you look carefully, when we were put together at point 0, we already had a need. You see that this curve doesn't start at 0, 0. It starts above it. So right then and there, when we were put together, when we were wrapped by the Creator into existence, like a little gift to the universe, okay, we already have a need. The need to achieve perfection. The need to evolve. The need to move forward. The need to improve ourselves. There is already something there, you see? And look that the needs go up. They become more and more intense, right? When I'm moving upward, aren't they becoming more intense? So, and as we move from left to right, isn't it as we progress? So what is happening is that we are getting more and more intense until we reach a certain maximum here, right? A peak, so to speak. So that's it. From this point to here, we are evolving. We are moving from left to right. Our needs are also going up in intensity. And why is that? Now let's try to understand this from the Spiritist point of view. Aren't the needs inherent to our psychosomatic constitution? In other words, aren't they dependent on our physical body or perispirit? That's what we should translate it into. So, as I become more and more complex as a form of life, the physicality, let us think of just the physicality first, also becomes more complex, and the needs are also more complex. So the intensity of the need or needs goes up. But then we reach a maximum. Why is it that after this point that it peaks and poof, after this, now let's look what happens on this side here. What happens after we peak? So from this point here to this point here, it kind of tapers off a little bit, right? It goes down. It's going down, right? We're still progressing, notice, because we're still moving from left, look at the arrow, to right. We are progressing. But here, we are going from a peak to a point that is lower. So the intensity of our needs is what? Decreasing. It's decreasing because from this point on in our journey, we no longer need to reincarnate. This peak here shows us the last reincarnation we will ever have, because we are not there yet. We are not there yet. But some of the high order spirits have reached that point. They no longer need to reincarnate on earth or in any other form, in any other place in the creation. So, because they no longer have a physicality, only a perispirit or spiritual body, their needs go down in intensity. But you notice that it goes down in intensity, but it doesn't go to zero. So what is left for eternity? What is this need that we still have? You see? We still have this need here. It's above zero. It's above zero, but we continue to progress. What is this need here? To progress, to evolve, to reach perfection. That is what is left for us here at this very end. We are no longer worried about physicality. We no longer have to eat. We no longer have to, that is what we hear when we read the Nosso-Lar, for instance, and the governor of Nosso-Lar, right? And we see that he doesn't sleep. He works 24/7, let's say, as we would say here, right? And doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep, right? And we think about, that doesn't sound right. Well, it sounds right because he doesn't have a physical body. And his spirit is also so evolved, so dematerialized, although that word is not very good, but so ethereal, that's better. That's a little better. It's so ethereal that even the needs of that perispirit, that spiritual body, are minuscule compared to the need to continue evolving. So he's now at this point, perhaps. We are not. We are way somewhere here in this ascending part of the curve here. We are not even at the peak or close to it. We still need to reincarnate. We still have to have one reincarnation after another to change physicalities, change physical bodies every single time. And with with everyone we have, improve not only the physicality, but then use this physicality as the tool to improve our spiritual body, which then relays the information to our essence, improving ourselves in that way. So this is how our profile will look like once we become, like we say today, the higher order, the highest order spirits, for instance, the echelon, the spirits of the echelon, the top line, or like the angelical beings. We will have still a need, the need for perfection, to continue following the footsteps of the Creator, trying to be the Creator, but never being it in the first, no matter how much we try, because there will always be something we need to learn, always something we need to develop, to work on. Now that we have seen the needs, so this is our profile, once again, let us look at something else. So this is the part that I will now just put it as a dotted line, because like I said to you, this is where we still are we still have to reincarnate here up to this point. It's only after this that we don't have. So keep this in your heads as this profile for our needs. So if we now take the same graph and look at our wants, this is what we get. This is our, this is our profile. This is the profile for our wants. Okay, and I put it in red. Okay? It's very patriotic, red and blue, and with a white background. Well, it's just that these are very nice contrasting colors, that's all. So now let's do the same thing. First, let us remind ourselves of what the definition of wants, all right? So wants are impositions that we create for ourselves. If we create for ourselves, we will them into existence. We emerge them. We bring them into existence. We birth them. We are the ones who create wants, not the physical body, not our spiritual body. We are the ones who will them into existence. And then we impart them to ourselves, and they are dependent, our wants are dependent on how morally and intellectually evolved we are. So now let us see this on the graph. Once again, we put the profile. This is the whole profile at the end of our whole life. When we are at eternity, we will look back, and this is what we will see as the profile of our wants. Okay, so this is a look into the future. See, we can't predict the future. Now let us look at the curve, as mathematics would say, slowly. The first thing is this point here. When I was put together, did I have a want? Nope. No want. No intensity. I have no wants when I'm put together, because we are born, created, put together, willed into the existence by the Creator itself, simple and ignorant. Now let us try to see if we can understand this simple and ignorant expression. You notice that for a while here, we have no wants. From this point to this point here, we have no wants. It's zero, right? In terms of intensity. But we are still evolving. Aren't we moving from left to right? The only thing is that there is no movement from bottom to top, right? It's a flat line there, here. So there are no wants, but I'm still evolving. What is happening there? Very simple. This is before we are upgraded, promoted to spirit. This is the time of our journey that we are monads, pre-spirits, or spirits to be. So what is happening here that is different from this side? Until this point here, there are two things primarily I do not have, or the best way to say it is not that, I'm sorry, that I have not yet developed, because we don't have these things, we develop them. Intelligence, and therefore free will. I need intelligence. I need to begin developing my intelligence so I can have the means, the tools to begin developing free will. Once I have started developing my intelligence, I can develop my free will. And if now I have developed some form, some amount of free will, nobody has free will. Okay? Now that I have developed some form of free will, I can actually will things. I can actually say, I would like, I desire, I want. This is why there are no wants until this point. This point, when the curve begins to move up, this is when we begin developing our intelligence and consequently our free will. And the message for the first part of this graph is, don't say you have a free will. Don't say you have intelligence. These are not rights. You don't go just before you come here during your reincarnation instruction seminar in the spiritual realm. You don't get out of the reincarnation seminar, go to a supermarket and look for the shelves that says free will, grab some and come to life. That's not how it happens. You do that with vital fluid. When we come to this physical plane, you actually go to a supermarket and say, I'm going to take this amount of vital fluid. That is an amount that you take, and you come here with that amount. Once it's over, no matter how well you've treated your body can no longer survive, your physical body, and that's when we die. Okay? But not about free will, not about intelligence. We develop them. We bring intelligence and free will into existence by our experiences. So it's from this point on that we start doing that. Until we reach a point that we are capable of starting our intelligence, our free will, no wants. And then what happens? Our wants begin to increase in intensity, okay? Until they peak. This is the highest intensity we can think of, right? So from this point here, so from this to that point, we are still progressing, isn't that so? Aren't we moving from left to right? So we're still progressing. Slowly, but it's okay. See, this is why I said this is not time, but progress. Because for me, this curve may be stretched a lot longer, so meaning that I'm doing it more slowly than one of you, for instance. And for one of you, this curve can be actually compressed. But I don't want this to be time. I want it to be progress, because we will all progress. No matter what we do or how long it takes, we will all get there. So this is why I said progress here. That avoids this comparison of who goes faster than whom. So now, if we look from here to here, we are progressing, but look at the intensity of our wants, from nothing to a very high value. It doesn't matter what the value is. It's going up, and we know that up means increase. What happens when we reach this point here? So now let's look at this side. The intensity of our wants begin to what? Decrease. It comes down. So now what we have, our wants here, we are still progressing. We are going from left to right, okay? But our wants are actually going down in intensity. I just have to change. It stopped working. Okay, and there we go. Sorry. So our it wanted to stop working. It didn't realize that I had a need to use it. So now from here to here, what is happening? My progress is still happening because I'm still moving from left to right. But the intensities of my wants are going down. What is going on here? I am becoming more morally and intellectually evolved. And I begin to get rid of the nonsense that I created for myself. Why do I need 3 houses when only one roof over my head protects me against the weather, protects me against the adversities of the weather, and so on and so forth? Why do I need to have, I don't know, 2 pointers? Well, unless one goes bad, all right? In principle, I wouldn't need 2 pointers, okay? Because now I could still use my finger. You know, we're not that low tech that we can't use our fingers as a pointer. Good? But you notice that at a certain level here, my wants, they never go down to 0 completely. You would expect, wait a second. Why is it that when I go now, so my wants were going down, so why don't they continue to go down all the way to 0 in intensity? Like it was when I was put together, right? So from this point here, I'm still progressing, but I still have a certain level of intensity in terms of my wants that is not necessarily 0. So something happens here. Let us see now when we put the wants and the needs together and see what happens. So this is the profile of my wants, all right? So now let us look. Same graph. We have the needs, remember the curve? And this is after I no longer need any reincarnation processes. So I no longer need to come to the physicality. I will only learn in the spiritual realm as a spirit, as an errant spirit, which is essence plus spirit. Okay, and this is the profile of my wants. And if we are very careful, we will see that my wants peak. The curve of my wants peak before my reincarnation, no longer need for reincarnation. So now notice that the 2 curves, what happens here? They merge, they are one and the same. because then I have evolved morally and intellectually long enough, extensively enough, to make my wants match only what I need. And this is why my wants can never go all the way down to zero completely. Look, at the beginning, my needs are never zero because the Creator built into us the need to reach perfection. But because I was born simple and ignorant, I was not given any want. After a while, my wants were created by my own doing, my misconception of the creation, the way as I was being a student of the creation, as I started it and I started developing my intelligence, and with that, with the free will, I began creating wants. And these wants began to go out of control, to grow out of control, until they peaked. Look at the peak here in terms of intensity. All right? I made this on purpose, very high and much higher than the one for the needs, to give this impression. I don't know what the distance really is. This is why I didn't put numbers here. But I wanted to convey that this is much higher than that, which means that this is more intense than this one. But then the Creator is perfect. And He gave us the ability to develop our intelligence and free will enough that we reach a peak and eventually we say, whoa, this is not correct. And we begin to evaluate ourselves better and better with time, and it begins to come down. And at one point, we have no more need to reincarnate, and eventually the two merge together, which is our whole history. This is the part we were discussing here. So we are not really perhaps at this top here, or maybe we are. Maybe we're still here somewhere in this upper, this climbing this curve here, in this ascending portion. But the important thing is that we will reach the top, the peak, and we'll eventually realize that our wants are out of control. They are actually determining our lives. And what we'll do is we'll begin to realign them more, or closer and closer, I would say, to our true needs, or just needs. Because by the definition today, there's no true need or false need. There's needs and there are wants. Okay? So that eventually they merge. And then here is the part when I become much wiser. I actually live with the things that I need only. All right? So it doesn't matter now if we are here. What is important is when we see the pattern, that we can recognize that one day we will realign ourselves. Because this is why I said here, I had progress and not time. Because we will all progress. This is our article of faith. We believe that we will all reach perfection. If we don't believe that, then I can see someone being skeptical to this graph. But it's our article of faith. Once we embrace it, then we know that whenever it happens, that it will happen at least. And we will realign the two over there. So, remember, this part here, the realignment, we are far from it. So what is going on when we talk about this part here? So in our daily lives, right, we need to be a little more careful. As we discussed just yesterday, we need to evaluate, and that was not during a lecture, but actually during one of the questions that were given. So when we evaluate our lives a little bit at a time, you wake up in the morning, all right? You don't have to say a huge prayer, a 1 hour long prayer. You just say, hey, there's the sun, I'm still in the physical realm. That's already an acknowledgement to yourself, making an awareness of the fact that you are on this planet, on this plane of existence. So when we live our lives by realizing moment after moment what we are doing, we grasp them, we interact with these moments in a much healthier way. And we do so, we have the time to teach ourselves slowly, methodically, without stress, of what we truly need and what we are just pushing the envelope too much in terms of a want. Because we create things, we create wants. We create wants for two reasons. One reason is to push us. When the cavemen had no fire, fire was a want, not a need. Fire was a want. It wanted to cook the food. It wanted to have protection against the other animals when he was asleep. She was asleep. When the whole clan was asleep, because you could just circle yourself with little fires, right? And the animals would not attack you would not prey on you when you were asleep. And you didn't have to have anyone working as a sentinel, not sleeping while all the others were dozing off, right? So it was a want. So one way of creating a want is by a desire to find comfort, a desire to find safety, a desire to find a better quality of life. And that is healthy. And this is why at the very beginning I said, we'll be very careful when we say that wants are necessarily detrimental. They are not. They are not. Okay? For instance, if you have a certain aspiration, whether it's a career, whether it's a job, whether it's like living in a particular place and this and that, if you work hard for that aspiration, it's still a want. It's still a want. Right? It's still a want, but it's a healthy one because you're working for it. So then you are improving yourself. So a want is actually the prodding tool for us to progress. At this level, we need to be prodded. We need to be pushed forward. We don't do it on our own. And the wants are the way to go about it. The problem is when now we create wants that are so far away that it's out of our reach. And then on top of this, and because of it, we now envy, we now have jealousy, and when these go to extremes, they develop into crime. The crime of sending bad vibrations to the individual who has or is something you don't have or something you are not. Notice that I'm being very careful to always say is and have, so that it's not just a question of possessions here. It's also a question of being. It's a question of morals, also intellect as well. So not talk about money or assets or houses or cars no, it's everything. Sometimes people envy us for being happy, for being spontaneous, for being peaceful, having peace of mind. All of these things, you cannot say that these are materialistic things. And yet, we get envy for them, right? So all of these things, when we actually have an aspiration, we see something and we would like to have or be it, but we work for it, that is healthy. It is a true healthy want, truly healthy want, right? The problem is when I make that want into something that's so far away that it will not be achievable. Okay? So I always like to give the ridiculous example. Like, I want to be an NBA player at my age with my height. Oh, come on. Just be reasonable, right? It will not happen. It will not happen. They peak at half of my age. They peak at half of my age, and they have twice at least my height. Well, not twice, but you got the point, right? Too short for the basket, right? So if you, but this is nice because it's something that you can make fun of it and you can have a little bit of a droll moment, but it gives us an idea. When I push my wants too far away, there is no amount of work that will make it happen. And then I will begin envying those who have what I don't have, or who are what I cannot be myself. So then I move from a healthy want to a destructive want. So not all wants are destructive, are unhealthy. They are actually something that is, at this point in our evolution, absolutely necessary. Without them, we don't go forward. They are the prodding tool that is moving us. Okay, they are the prodding tools that are moving us, okay, towards our perfection, as long as we keep them in check. When we let them go too high, too intense, we lose control of them. But it doesn't matter, because in our progress, we'll eventually bring them down and we'll realign them with our needs, which are the needs of the spirit and not of the physicality or even the spiritual body. Okay? So, if we remember now, they align here at the very end. So the curve here gets a different color, it's a different shape about it. Okay? So it gets this purple color. So this is when needs and wants, you can't pull one from the other. You cannot extricate one from the other. We live exactly to fulfill the needs. You might say, but isn't that a sort of a boring life, or a life of an automaton? No, because the need, or needs if you prefer, that the Creator gave to us, that will remain with us for eternity, okay? These needs are the needs to reach out to that Creator, to become that Creator, to evolve to it, to progress to it. Okay? So it's a healthy, like I said before, the needs are always healthy. We don't have destructive needs. To have a destructive need would mean that the Creator put in us something that was destructive. And according to our major article of faith, that God is perfect, we cannot accept that. To accept that is to accept that God cannot be perfect, or at least have imperfections at certain points in time, which not only puts God inside time, but also dependent on it. And it's not the case. It has to be the supreme, the absolute Lord of everything, time inclusive. Okay? So this is what I had to discuss with you in terms of needs and wants. I hope it was clear to all of you how we start, how this progression of our needs and wants, they go about. Okay, throughout our spiritual progress. It's, I think, important because we realize the points when we start developing intelligence, when we start developing our free will, when we started the very beginning. Why did I have a need that I didn't have a want? Why is it the Creator did it this way? And realizing that the Creator was magnificently just in giving us needs, but not wants. Because then those needs are are moving us forward all the time without creating obstacles to our progress. And then you might say, well, but then I create wants that kind of disturb my progress in a way. Yes, but within those wants, I also have those that also push me forward. So it's a question of just realigning ourselves. And we realign ourselves, okay, based on how much we learn, how much we interact. If I don't interact and I don't make mistakes, I don't learn. If I don't learn, my wants are always going to be very intense, and I will never bring them down again to the level of my needs. So not to put down wants, it's one of the major consequences, okay? But just realign them, bring them closer to what we have as needs. And then you're going to say to me, well, then what is the recipe to do it? I don't know. Remember the definition of both of them, both needs and wants. They are individual. If they are individual, I cannot give you a formulaic protocol. I cannot say do this, 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 in this particular order and at this particular time. This is not like a prescription. You have to find your own prescription. You are the patient and the doctor in one. Because the Creator willed at our creation that we would be, that we would be the artists of our own perfection. The Creator was humble enough to say, I have willed you into existence. Come to me and become me, but on your own terms, in your own time. And because we are now doing so, we have to find ourselves the right prescription for ourselves. So we are going, in this case, and it's the only case I can think of where self-medication is not only acceptable, but the only way to go about it. Because we can only be the doctors of ourselves, nobody else. Nobody else has had the experiences. Remember the conditions and set thereof? The conditions, the experiences, everything that we have already gone through, we are the only ones who know it. Or know them, the whole thing, all the conditions. So we are the only ones who can actually adjust ourselves and realign our wants to our needs. Okay? So that's what I had to present to all of you. Thank you for the invitation, for your attention, and glad to entertain questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Now we're going to open for questions. And it was beautiful, Julio.
Okay. Just put the last one there.
You made me to feel, how can I say? You made me to feel very good about my wants.
No, that's the point. Because when we read, the first question that comes, there are two things that happen when we start addressing these things, especially in the Spirit's book. The first thing that people go straight into materialism. Oh, can I have a pen? Can I have this? You can. Like I said just yesterday, right? A millionaire needs a jet plane. Because by having that jet plane, he or she can move much faster between points and perhaps guarantee tens of thousands of jobs. He's not going to be taking the train or the bicycle to go to work. But in having that for that individual is almost a need. And with that, well used, he produces or she produces a lot of jobs, for instance. But I don't. I don't have a need for it. So if I have one, for me is that is the destructive want, because I'll be probably working to pay for the fuel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very, very well.
Just
One day I was talking to myself. I know everyone here talks to themselves all the time. Sometimes I say no, all the time. I talk to myself. I walk to my closet. I was very tired this morning. Mm-hmm. And I looked to my closet, to my clothes. Then I said, do I need all this? Now you don't know what you're going to wear it? I checked the weather. Then I said, why I cannot be like Sister Jenny, a friend of mine. But individuals.
Yes,
she's from India. She has two clothes, two white clothes. She's Indian. And I said, if I was like Sister Jenna, I don't have that problem now looking to all this, then I don't need all that. And then I said, Abigail, you saved it today. Don't put in, don't put in flip-flops.
Flip-flops.
I said, it's a safety that I'm talking about. I know that. I'm not going to go in a t-shirt to the same, because that's me, my own me. Yeah. I changed just two child's clothes today, but that's good, But that's very relevant for that wonderful example you gave about the jet. Someone needs that. Of course, I don't have one, I don't need that. We needed to balance our needs. And we needed to talk to ourselves more. That's why I like that I talk to me. And then Sunday is the gospel day, and then we do gospel to my husband and I. Oh, I have to share later it all. We always do two books. What the message that came in, everything is not a coincidence, But we need you to take all the lessons in our life to improve, to try to understand why today, why now, and become better. Like you said, you have an eternity to improve. Maybe someone's going to be very pick on them once, but that is okay. Slowly we are going to achieve perfection. Any questions, please?
I don't bite.
I'd like to say something.
Sure.
More a comment than a question.
Sure.
I was able to watch all 3 presentations of Julio this
Okay, yes.
Thursday at AKSS, yesterday and today. And I'm very glad I did. And I don't know if you intentionally did this, but I noticed that one lecture complemented the other, and it was just beautiful. And I'm really thankful for all 3 of them. And today was like the closing of all, but it was really beautiful. I don't know if anybody else, I think we were the only 2.
Grand finale.
Oh, they did it, yeah. So it was just.
It wasn't intended at first, because when I gave a list of topics to them, they picked the topics. And then 2 of the centers picked the topic right away, and 1 center just picked the topic like 2 weeks ago. So, but then when I was putting them together, no, but what I want to convey is this: it wasn't really my idea. They kind of worked one into the other, and then I realized that, and then I forced it. But it wasn't my original idea. That's what I want to say. And it was actually a big, yeah, good. Yes, hopefully. Yes, please.
I don't know, the question is more like a comment. I'm so glad that you have brought this in this way that you presented. We have studied, the Spiritist book about, the needs and wants and so forth. So I just made me now realize what you say about the wants. That is something that on this material world makes us progress.
Yeah.
So our wants, as you said, that the man who needs his jet to go and, keep all 1,000 drops around. So because I think we use these terms a little bit with such a casuality. I need is, I want that, but we don't think. Sometimes, that's one point. And the other point is, like the ones on this physical world, I think is important because there is nothing worse a person who does not have a little bit of ambition.
Right.
And I think ambition is also a word that sometimes is misrepresented. We think that ambition is bad.
Yes.
A little bit is healthy. So we need to
Ambition in the sense of aspiration.
aspiration.
No, you can still say the word ambition. I'm not picky about it. It's like when people say, you shouldn't say pride. No, you can. You can say you have pride of what you have accomplished in life. You have pride in your children. You have pride in your household. It doesn't matter. Pride in what you do at your job. You can. Then you should say satisfaction. Oh, give me a break. Don't be a hypocrite. It's pride. Okay, satisfaction is a synonym. Yes, I'm proud of. Yes, when you say to a friend who you want to actually, be nice to, you're not trying to put the person down or berate, right? So you can use these things, and same thing for ambition. The only thing is how we go about it, how we go about that pride, or how we go about that ambition. So in the sense of aspiring to do something, envisioning yourself in a few years or months doing that, it's great. You should do it. It's not negative. Yes.
Okay, I'm thinking now, you heard there.
Mm-hmm.
I am a errant spirit. I'm in the spiritual world between incarnations.
Mm-hmm.
All these needs and wants play. And also, after I am so getting to be a pure, almost pure spirit, so I don't need anyone to reincarnate in anyone, any shape. And I want to still the needs in that phase is what? To be wiser, to be more compassionate, to be more a good servant to the ones that are coming in balance. What is this? These differences Between me, there is still in between, and me now always there.
So, can I start from the end, if you don't mind? So when we're here,
Yes.
when we have no more need to reincarnate, and we reach this plateau here, as we say in math, so that our needs and wants are the same. So basically here I can use either one. The word needs or the word wants, it's the same thing. But what is it that a spirit at this point here, which is an errant spirit, it still has a perispirit, mind you. It's an essence with a perispirit, which is what we call together the spirit. So a spirit here is still learning, right? So what is the need here? Well, think about it this way. Take away any willingness to learn at this point. Isn't that hell? You sit and you watch everything forever without doing anything. So the need is actually just to keep improving yourself.
I think
Then-
that stop doesn't every year
You know?
or you year. Because every the material we need and want. And the spirit, I think we need more than needs and want. To, how do I say that? To share and to help others
Okay.
in the other side.
Yeah, it's not exactly like that. So, did I answer that part at least, at this part? When we're talking about the, let's say, spirits are no longer in need of reincarnation. They don't have to have a reincarnation process. So, here, the need is actually that willingness to just continue learning. To be wiser, whatever. I don't know if those words are applicable there, but it's what we have today. Yeah. But now, the first part of the question, and I'm going to address what you mentioned. Sorry, it's when what are the shapes of these two graphs when we are errant spirits? That was the first part of Yasko's. I didn't say physical body progress. I didn't say the perispirit progress. I said spiritual progress. So the curve is exactly the same. Where you're an errant spirit, or whether you are a reincarnated spirit, is the same shape, because there's no way you can go back being better or worse, and there is no way you can come here being better or worse. You are what you are, because we are defined by the essence. So the curves are the same. And this is why we read in the André Luiz collection in particular, right? Spirits who want to eat. Spirits, André Luiz said that once he moved out of the Nosso Lar's hospital, right? And he went to a house and they offered him soup. And he looked at it and said, that's not substantial. That's not going to nourish me. He still had the need. In his mind, it was a need. And actually, his spirit had that need, because it was so dense still that he needed something a little more substantial as nourishment. He could not take it, and then they offered him a broth.
But I don't need 2 cars or,
They do?
plane or
No.
whatever. So I feel the ones should be lower.
No, they do. They do. They build colonies. They build cities. And they even have people under them as slaves, because they enslave people because they have the need. It's not need. It's a want. But they see it as a need. Okay? And this is where the confusion with that's why we use them interchangeably and mistakenly. Because the moment that I see something and I classify it as a need, because I have not really thought very carefully about it. But then as I realize it, no, I'm pushing it too much here. This is really just a desire, a want. It's not really a need. All right? So in the spiritual realm, you have those who want the power, who want to enslave others, want to have others under their boots, right? The shape doesn't change. Yeah. You have spirits, for instance, that when they show themselves with jewels, they show themselves with certain types of clothing. Same thing. And for those who are mediums that can see, seeing mediums. Yeah.
And me ask her, as we progress, the way I see, of course, here on earth, you cannot go to college if you don't have it elementary school. So if I'm in elementary school, I don't know all that. If I'm in elementary school, you don't know what is on high school. You know, it is the same thing when you ask the question, you know, if when you get there, when you become evangelicals, if you're going to still think for us to learn, we are in a stage that we know it is, but we don't know what it is. You know, and we still don't have even words to express ourselves. That's why Joanna journalists say we need to improve our vocabulary. And what I thought was so nice of her, that she became even more humble, that she lowered her way of writing to us. Because I'm serious, every time I read the book, I have to have a dictionary next to me. And Spiritist asked her, could you help us by lower a little bit for other people to be interested to read your books? And she did. So that's amazing. Yep. But we don't want us now to do anything, know better, to become lazy and go to that book. You know, but it's up to us. We have the free will. Well, a lot of people say next life. Next life I improve. Our free will, how fast one improve. But regardless, like Julie said, that's the direction you go. Yep. From left to
You continue the same.
But I'm doing still.
Name once.
Yep.
Yes. And you have to, don't let things hurt us. Because I see when things hurt us sometimes, if allow this technology. Technology is so scary for me sometimes. You know, that we have to watch. Because it was a jump in our time now. And it's a need for, we know that we have to be careful. You know, with this needs and wants because technology.
Yep.
It is any other question, we still have
It's like this, you don't know how to work with your computer, but you buy a newer model.
I'm sorry for my...
You know, like when you're talking about technology, one discrepancy between needs and wants, right? You don't know how to use the computer you have right now, but you buy a newer model. We do this with our cell phones, right? We still don't know how to use half of it, but we buy a new one.
For us to be here today and filming and people watching us over the other side of the world, that was a really want from somebody to start developing all this technology. And I think that was part of these inspirations and aspirations, both together, as one believing in himself inside of it, and having this computer, this laptop, this graph that you just point and show light. I mean, when humanity could ever have realized that we could have all that, right?
Yeah.
So,
But you see, this is a healthy want. Because think about it, do you really need it? No, your body will not cease to exist because of it. Will continue to work as it has been before the internet, before the network, before the technology and computers and everything. But for us, it's a way to progress faster. So eventually that want that started as a want turns into almost like a need. It's still a want, but it's close enough because it's so healthy for us. But it's the problem is exactly what I said. You don't know how to operate one, you buy the newer model. It makes no sense to me, all right?
It's like last week, for us to wrap. I was with my cell phone, and my colleague Sylvia was next to me. She has one a little bit more advanced than mine, but she still comes to me and says, look, your cell phone can do just that. I said, never going to learn that. And I said, how do you have time to learn that, to work many hours a day? Oh, I needed to go. I said, I don't need that. But then she said, my phone can do more things than Word, and the camera is much better for, except my students, for my pictures. It's exactly what he said. I don't know half what my phone does. And why I'm going to jump to number 10, I even didn't finish learning, but for your business, it's going to be better if you have that other thing that is not there. That's why technology is scary. I even didn't finish learning, but one more thing, and soon I'm not gonna be able to operate my phone. Like now, using cassette tapes, right? I still have about 6 cassette tapes here. But now, they don't make things for you to use your cassette tapes. Then you are forced.
Yeah.
It's not that you need it, not that you want, you're gonna need it to buy the other thing.
Yeah, but that's a little different because that is when now you are so far behind the trend, that not even the trend, the average. Then eventually we cannot keep supporting because otherwise, well, we would have to be supporting, butter churners. And nobody does butter churning anymore, right? Unless, it's for you to learn something, to have a nice weekend in a rural area. But we don't do that. If you want to mass produce butter, you're not going to be doing butter churning anymore. So that's a little different, right? Yeah. But again, that is balance. Yeah, it's important, but it's not a balance between needs and wants. There it's different. It's just because it's very hard for us to support something that is very, very, very outdated. You can have a computer from 1982, but you are limited to certain things. You cannot have a computer from 1982 and want it to do things from 2019. So if you're going to have a computer from 1982, your wants have to end at things from 1982. You cannot, that's what I said when you overstretch your wants. If you now have a 1982 computer wanting it to do 2019 things, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I just want to say one thing just at the very, I'm going to be here, so if you want to ask other questions, I just want to point out one interesting thing again, because that sentence, simple and ignorant, has always bothered me. And it's very rich. And remember this when it comes to needs and wants. Simple. So it means that we have no wants. We have no wants. And because we are ignorant, until we develop our own intelligence, we will not have wants. So we will not have distractions. But we will still be progressing. So the Creator was wise enough not to give us distractions at first. Because He knew that if we had distractions from the very beginning without intelligence, we wouldn't have the means, the tools to correct our paths. We have to have some intelligence at least. So that is the meaning of simple and ignorant. One of the things that you can at least now perhaps anchor to understand that expression a little better. And the fact that the only need basically that we want is to be driven to perfection.
One more time.
Thank you.